Recently, the group of friends that I played D&D with, or used to play D&D, had to make a decision as to what we should do with the OGL and D&D. Previously, we were playing D&D, but we didn't quite feel like supporting Wizards of the Coast, Hasbro, in their attack on the TTRPG community, and so this is my basic thoughts on running a Pathfinder game, 2nd edition, after having run 5th edition. I am Good Chaos, and welcome to Good Chaotic. So this video is basically just going to be my thoughts as a game master coming from 5th edition to moving to a system that we don't quite understand, and how the overall process went, and maybe if you yourself should make the switch. Now in the end, I can't say you should or shouldn't. All I can do is say, for us, was it worth it? Yet to be determined, I guess. Now, the first thing we had to do was create our characters. Now, if you are coming from 5th edition, character creation is easy. I'm an orc, and I'm a fighter, and I'm going to place my stats, roll my stats, and I'm done. Easy. But Pathfinder is essentially like drinking from a fire hose. There's race, there's heritage, there's class feats, there's skill feats, there's generic feats, there's archetypes, it's just so much. And that was basically the very first problem we ran into. Some of our players that were a little bit hesitant about switching had a lot of trouble with it. It was a lot, and not to mention the fact that we had a game in 2 days. It was a little bit frustrating for some because we were under a time constraint, and it actually, up until the characters weren't done when we started the game. And so from a perspective of creating characters, knowing nothing from the system, it was bad. Now if you have some time, easier, but I mean, even having the extra time that we had, it was still rough for everyone involved, even myself, trying to help them, kind of fudging rules. And I played Pathfinder like once, twice, before this, years ago, but you know, eventually, however, we powered through and we ended up with mostly done characters, not even fully their characters. Like, we had stats and we had feats picked out and general ideas, but the characters weren't done in 2 days. So that is one thing about Pathfinder, I think, that differs from D&D 5e. Pathfinder has a very high learning curve, but once you get over that learning curve, that also leads to a plethora of options for you to make your characters. And so it's kind of, what do you want? Do you want a simplified system that has a lower ceiling, or do you want a more complex system with a higher ceiling? In the end, once again, this is your decision to make, not mine. But that's just my thoughts behind that. And the game itself, the role-playing of the game, because the session was separated into 2 basic concepts. You had the role-playing, finding the encounter, and the encounter itself. And if you want, you can check it out up there. The role-playing encounter was phenomenal. Nothing really changes. That's the cool thing about TTRPGs. It's not the system that's cool, it's the friends and the role-playing aspect. And I think everyone as a whole enjoyed finding the encounter, hunting down this assassin that had kidnapped one of the players and was holding them hostage because that player didn't show up. Looking at you. He was sick with the flu, so don't bother. Yeah, it's fine. It happens. But they seem to enjoy it. But that is just rolling a couple skills, right? Skills are the easy part. The real game meat and potatoes comes from the combat. How was the combat? I think the combat itself was faster than normal D&D. I could be wrong, but the overall encounter, which was supposed to be a tough encounter, and it kind of pushed them. 2 characters went down. They had to use some hero points to prevent themselves from going down, dip into all their spells. The encounter as the DM that I made myself from the rule book, I figured out how to do that, I think really felt as difficult as I wanted it to do. They didn't get a walk through it, but they weren't really at risk of dying. It was frustrating for the players, I feel like. They didn't understand their characters very well. They didn't understand the system very well. And as such, we kind of had to, or they kind of had to, play on the fly, operating with a bit of back and forth between me and them and the one person who is proficient in Pathfinder in our group. And Pathfinder has one of my favorite things ever, which is hazards. The fight started well before the fight, or the encounter started well before the fight started. It started out with a pit trap where they saw the trap and they said, well, I think we're supposed to jump on it. And then he jumped on the trap, he being our skeleton rogue who's supposed to disarm traps. And in the end, they all fell, as should happen. And then the next trap they missed, which was another pit to drop them to a lower level. And so by the time the actual combat encounter started, they were all half health. And that was built into the challenge of the encounter. And I think that's a phenomenal way to handle encounters, because theoretically you can make the actual fights shorter, less enemies, less challenging of fights, so the overall encounter will go faster. Because the combat in any TTRPG is what drags everything down. And Pathfinder really gives you a way to mitigate that challenge, I think. And it just provides a more balanced fighting encounter because they've already wasted resources getting to the fight itself. And I think that's one thing that Pathfinder does better than D&D is, at least in my experience, very much enemies. And then you throw your enemies at them and they sword and shield, and then you win, get your milestone, and leave. The players, however, did mention that combat did seem to drag on, and I do agree, and I don't know if I chalk that up to Pathfinder or inexperience. I lean towards inexperience because overall, a challenging fight lasted an hour and a half to 2 hours, which before has been an entire session. So it's difficult to really say. In conclusion, I think Pathfinder will be hard to get into. There's a steep learning curve. It's not just pick up a book, read it, and you got it. Pathfinder provides rules for basically everything. Instead of having a shield and the shield giving you a +2 to AC, you have to use an action to raise the shield up to give yourself the +2, or you have a feat that gives you a skill shield block, which allows you to raise it up quickly. And then shields have hit points and a hardness and a breaking point, and every feat has something to do. Skills have actions associated, like the athletic skill, you can use the climb action, or you could. And so Pathfinder has rules for basically everything, which 5th edition did not. 5th edition was, you want to climb something, roll your strength. Great. Or athletics. Would I have rather stayed with D&D than have to learn an entire new system? Probably. Is that an option? No. Wizards doesn't seem like they're getting better. They're still being just a bunch of buttholes, and the news is getting more and more dire. And so I think in good conscience we can't go back, right? We have to wait for Wizards to get their head out of their butt and realize that they need us more than we need them. And is Pathfinder a viable option for you and your friends? Well, in the end, yeah, because the game isn't what's important, it's your friends. So you could get dice and give yourself D&D stats. Like, I have a D10, and I'm going to add 3 to because my strength is a 3. I mean, the systems are fun, but not what's important. So in the end, go with whatever your friends are doing. Play with your friends, have fun with your friends, because D&D and Pathfinder, any system is just guidelines to help you have fun. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you want to play Pathfinder? Do you play Pathfinder? Will you never play Pathfinder? D&D all the way. Hashtag Opendnd. Let me know in the comments below what you feel like. We, as a group, will continue on with Pathfinder, and we will wait for Wizards to release their OGL 2. But will we go back after they release their OGL 2? I don't know. Not hopeful. Thank you for watching. Thanks for hanging out. And here's your heart and your blink. And we'll see you in the next video or in the next stream. Bye. Is not cobblestone. It's all imported stone from various parts of the city for like a feeling of prestige. And look at our what we walk on is expensive.
These are Elysian pebbles.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't sound like a waste of money to me. Sounds like that created a lot of jobs, but whatever.